To take our drawing a little further, to actually build a chair from this box, the first thing to do is now to add more boxes. So I want to have some arms on here. All you have to do now is find a line between here and here that would fit, that would work for both. So here I've got an angle, and just as these angles are getting less and less angled toward the eye level, this is closer to the eye level than this line, but not as close as that. So I've got to find a happy medium, something in between. I can decide if I want a T-cushion, a cushion that forms itself around the arm. So I'm going to have one of those. So now the question to answer is, what should this line look like? It's between this angle and this angle. What should that look like? And you'll know when you see it, you'll get a feel for it, and you just remember our ultimate goal is to be able to figure this out. Now, this is another thing that's happening here. We have a lot of lines going on, an awful lot of lines already, and there are going to be more. So this exercise, again, is going to help you to be able to close your mind and your eye from looking at all of those lines that aren't important at the moment. This is what's important at the moment. This is what's important at the moment. And the other lines are meant to be there, but just to behave themselves and not get involved in what you're doing. Just ignore them for now. You have to deal with this. Okay, now I need a line that's going to bring my arm across. Arms are the same height, so they need to behave, get along with each other. See, I needed a line between here and between here, so I had to kind of, and I'm watching to see that this space appears larger than this space, and it doesn't, so I've not done that quite right here. I've got to bring this down a little bit. And this height of this arm should appear less than this height, and it does, so that I did okay. And this now, I have to join these up. So I'm looking for this kind of line rather than this kind of line. So it's easing up. It's not as angled as this, so that's what's happening. But what's funny is that this arm looks longer than the one that's closest to us, and this is called foreshortening. As something turns toward you, you're losing less of the look of depth. It's foreshortening. It's looking shorter. So that's important as well. Now this arm is this wide, but in the distance I know it's not going to appear quite so wide. So I can already just kind of, it goes against the grain. You think an arm should have so much width, but you have to obey what you know to be true. So this exercise is a combination of two things. Things that you know and things that you can observe in the world around you, and the things that you need to do in order for it to look correct. So there's a lot going on. So now I've got two arms, I've got my seat, and have my back, and now I'm going to break it up and have a lovely, a nice big cushion. See, this is wrong. This should look wider, that should look narrower. So I was going the wrong way, and I've got to fit it between these two lines. I've got to get a sense of what that should look like. And now I'm going to go down here. Now, in the beginning, it might be a good idea for you to do some of these from imagination before you start working with your references, because the references will maybe have a slightly different perspective and it might throw you off. But just, even as I say, piling boxes on top of boxes is exciting enough in the beginning, I think. So you could just stop there, but why not? Why not give this a try? Now, legs, look around at legs and you'll see they quite often don't end up right at the very corner of a piece of furniture. They're set back a little bit. So we can make an X from corner to corner. Now you've got to ignore all that other stuff and just look at the base here. The base square. Now there's the middle of how it's sitting on the floor, but I want my leg to be in a little bit. So I'm going to go like this, and I'm trying to anticipate where the line, and every time I cross that X, I want to go the other way so that I'm getting a smaller square, same proportion, but inside that bigger square. And every time it crosses here, that X, I don't know how we can see that X, I don't want to go too dark, then you can see where it crosses. Now I can start to put my leg in. I'm going to just put a simple square leg, and from this point of view this has to go this way, so I can see that much of a leg. Now I'm sketching, so I have to anticipate how much bigger this one should appear than the one that's further away. So I'm already thinking, okay, I'll make this a little bit wider. It does make it look a little shorter, which is strange, but that's how it would go. And here, this one is set back quite a bit, so I think that looks odd. So I'm going to change that. I'm going to make it not go back quite so far. And I can't see, now I could do a perspective line back here, but this is a sketch, so we'll just eyeball it. I can't see the hidden leg. Okay, so now, what about a cushion? We should have, now this, you see, you can see how much space should that cushion take up here on my chair. It can't go any further across than this, and it can't go any further across than this. So I can, let's make it, it's such a square chair, I think I'm going to try to make it quite a rounded cushion. So there, you see, it's got to come forward. It can't go as far back as that, so it's got to come forward. There, it's coming forward, and it's sitting, it's going to sit like that, and it's going to cross over. And so these are organic shapes. So there's a tendency to want to go really sketchy here, but you've got to watch and not get too there. So there's plenty of room now there, and there's our other arm. And it's very square, so you will want to round it out. So there's our curvilinear lines. We got those going, and I'm firming up my lines a little bit as well as I go along. I'm going to round this out as well. Make that, round this out, and this, like that. See, it's below eye level, so you see the top of the chair. And this is all of a piece, so I'm going to round out here. Keep your eye on the other arm. I almost made a mistake there, but see why we kept this so light. This is cushion over arm, so I'm going to taper that a little bit. It's too wide, because this is that wide. This can't be that wide. I'm keeping my insides light. I don't want them to, see, the chair has to read as a silhouette, so you might have to do a drawing that has to read across a boardroom. So you've got to make the silhouette of the chair read. The inside details, they're not so important at that moment. What's important is, okay, there's a chair, and it's a nice big fat one, and it's sitting over there in that space. So that's the information that people should get at the beginning. Now this, you can put a little bit and then show. And this can be, it's upholstered, so you can make that a little bit rounded as well. I have to be careful not to chop. There's a tendency to want to speed up and chop, but you don't. You take your time. And here, I can round that up. And now that leg being so far back, if I round that up, it doesn't seem quite so odd. Now I've only used my ballpoint pen, and that we can use instead of our or you know, you can find something light in your kit. So I've only got light lines now, and I want to go in and use my now remember, we're looking for it to read as a silhouette. That's the most important thing. Oh, I've gone a little outside, but that's okay. I can put some piping or something to make that read okay. Oops. Now notice I'm not putting the inside line. I'm just sticking to the outside. The inside line can stay light. And then I want to accent some of these because they're important details. So I've got 3 weights of line now, or 2. I've got 2. I've got one more marker I can do, and dots are okay too. Dots are nice to add to any drawing. Just add a few little dots in. I've got my thicker pen. It's a good idea on the light side to leave it light, and then on the one side, choose up one side to be your shadow side. So I'm gonna move my paper so that I can do a better job here. But I'm gonna make this side my darker side. I'm using my Pentel sign pen now. And as I was saying, you never know you try not to go inside, but sometimes it's okay to just give your drawing a little extra oomph. And now that I've got that thick line on there, I want to go a little thicker inside too. Now it looks like I'm just jabbing at it, but I'm not. I'm trying to do it in a... Now this is still qualified as a lighter inside line, so I'm not going too heavy. So now I've got 3 weights of line. And why I'm doing that, I'm doing this one, I know why, because it's overlapping. So to overlap, it's handy to go a little bit darker. We can use this as our shadow. We'll just put a nice shadow underneath. And always with your overlapping lines. Now I'm going to have a little bit of a shadow here, so I'm going to put in my hatching. And hatch here as well. And underneath I'm going to hatch. Now these should be spaced evenly together and close, but I have a tendency always to want to rush. But now the legs, the front leg, it's going to have a bit of a shadow here and a shadow here, but you can leave the front part. And it too is in perspective, so that shadow, so you want to be careful what you're doing there. This one would all be in shadow. There. And I'll put this whole side in shadow. So I'll maybe show a little bit of this catching light because the cushion is thick. So, and I'll put some shadow in here. So undersides, they get shadow. And then maybe there's a little thickness here too. So when I start this shadow, I can leave a bit of a line. And here as well, just let that. Now, all of those light lines underneath, they're not troubling us too much. And this is a sketch, so there is that expectation that, and I'm going to just let this belly out. Maybe this will get a little bit, well, this will be in shadow. And there's a little shadow underneath it too. But you try, for these organic things, you're choosing an organic shape for your shadow. And these I'm not keeping as straight as I should. These should look beautifully straight. They're really quite, they can really be quite beautiful. I don't think they are today, but they can be. I just want to clean this line up a little bit if I can. And there'll be a little shadow here. There's a little delay because of the height. The light is above. Most always it's above, so we can put a little shadow here as well. Find a place on your paper to put a little floor plan and create this more interesting version of the shadow. We're using a point on the floor. You can see my red dots, and it's showing you where the center ray of the light source above is hitting the surface, hitting the floor, and how it influences the shape of the shadow for the chair. So you go through each part of the chair that is changing in terms of height, and you'll see there's a bit of the shadow that shows the seat of the chair, the shadow for that on the right, and then it goes up a bit to show the shadow for the arm, and then the shadow for the back. And the best way to start though is to do that on the floor plan. Take your line through those corners and see where the chair interrupts the light, and then it's much easier to see that in the floor plan. You'll need to put the red dot in, but don't be too concerned about using your colored pencil to fill in the shadow shape. You can stick with the cross-hatching that you have. Nothing's really changed on the chair itself, but the shape of the shadow on the floor. Please modify that so that we get this look, and please put in the little floor plan and begin with that. It's much easier to see there.